Tonight, I want to deal with the question that quietly follows this entire teaching around like a shadow. It's the question people are almost too embarrassed to ask out loud. And it's the question that, if left unanswered, will eventually make you quit. The question is this: when I lie in bed and imagine that I already am the person who is what I want, am I practicing something real, or am I simply lying to myself? Is this assumption, or is this delusion? Because on the surface, they look identical. Both involve believing something that isn't yet visible. Both involve holding a picture in your mind that contradicts the evidence in front of you. A man with no money imagining he's wealthy, and a man with no money hallucinating that he's wealthy look, from the outside, exactly the same. So what actually separates them? Tonight, I want to give you the real distinction, the one that rescues this entire practice from being a polite form of self-deception and turns it into the most disciplined mental act a person can perform. Let's start with what delusion actually is, because most people misuse the word. Delusion is a fixed false belief that persists in spite of, and in denial of, present fact. The deluded man insists the world outside his window has already changed when it plainly hasn't. He argues with the evidence. He gets angry when reality contradicts him. He demands that other people confirm what he's decided is true right now. In the visible world, today, that is delusion. It is rigid, defensive, and turned outward. It needs an audience. It needs the world to agree immediately, or it collapses. Assumption is something else entirely. Assumption doesn't argue with the outer world at all. It doesn't even look at the outer world. It operates in a different room altogether, the room of inner conviction, and it patiently allows the outer world the time it needs to rearrange itself to match. The man who assumes he is wealthy isn't shouting at his empty bank account, insisting it's full. He isn't trying to convince his neighbor of anything. He has simply, quietly, changed who he is being on the inside, and he lets that inner change do its slow work without needing anyone's confirmation, without needing the outer facts to catch up on his schedule. Delusion demands the world agree now. Assumption doesn't require the world's agreement at all. That's the whole distinction, and once you actually feel it, this practice stops being fragile. Here's why this distinction matters so much practically. If you don't understand it, you'll do this practice for 3 or 4 nights, glance at your life, see that nothing outward has changed yet, and something in you will whisper, "This is delusional. You're lying to yourself. Stop." And you'll quit exactly at the point where the deluded man would have been forced to quit anyway, because his false claims about the visible world were never going to survive contact with the visible world. But you were never making a claim about the visible world. You were making a claim about your inner state, and inner states are the one thing that is always, immediately, entirely true the moment you occupy them. If you inhabit the feeling of being secure tonight, you are not being delusional about that. You are, in that moment, actually secure inside. That part isn't pretend at all. What hasn't happened yet is the outer expression of it. An outer expression was never supposed to arrive on the same night as the inner shift. That gap between the two is not evidence that you're lying to yourself. That gap is simply called time, and time is the only thing standing between assumption and its natural fulfillment. Let me give you the mechanism, because once you understand how the mind actually works, the whole worry about delusion dissolves on its own. Your mind operates on 2 levels. There is the surface, the part that observes facts, keeps score, argues, doubts, and reports back on what is currently visible. That surface layer is honest, and it should be honest. It's not supposed to lie to you about your bank balance. If it did, that really would be delusion. But beneath that surface sits a deeper layer, the one that doesn't deal in current facts at all. It deals in identity. It answers only one question, endlessly, in the background of everything you do. Who am I? And whatever answer you hand it, with enough conviction and enough repetition, it accepts as settled, and it quietly rearranges your perceptions, your instincts, your decisions, and eventually your circumstances to agree with that answer. This deeper layer was never designed to check today's facts before it accepts an identity. It was designed to receive an identity and then go build the facts that match it. That's its entire job. Assumption isn't lying to the surface mind about today. Assumption is handing tomorrow's blueprint to the layer that actually builds tomorrow. Two different departments, two different jobs, and no contradiction between them at all. This is exactly why the timing of the practice matters so much. Right before sleep, the surface layer, the honest scorekeeper, finally goes quiet for the night. The auditor clocks out. And in that soft, narrow window, whatever identity you're holding sinks down almost undefended into the deeper layer, the one that actually does the building. This is why the practice was never asking you to convince your daytime, fact-checking mind of anything false. It was asking you to bypass that mind altogether, in the one window where it steps aside on its own, and speak directly and only to the layer whose job is identity, not fact-checking. Delusion tries to force the surface mind to accept a false present. Assumption simply waits for the surface mind to go quiet, and then speaks to the layer that was built to receive exactly this kind of instruction. Now let me give you the 4 tests. Because in practice, most people can tell the difference between assumption and delusion instantly once they know what to check for. And I want you to run these tests on yourself tonight before you begin. The first test is whether you need anyone else to agree with you right now. Delusion needs an audience today. It needs your friends, your family, the world, to nod along immediately, or it starts to panic. Assumption needs no audience at all. It's a private, quiet interact that doesn't require a single other person's confirmation, tonight or any night soon. If you find yourself needing to announce your new identity to people so they'll validate it, that's a signal you've drifted from assumption into something closer to performance, closer to delusion. Pull it back inward. Keep it private. Let it be unwitnessed. The second test is whether you argue with the present facts or simply set them aside. The deluded man insists his empty account is full. The man practicing assumption knows perfectly well the account is empty tonight and doesn't argue with that fact for 1 second. He simply isn't building his identity out of that fact anymore. He's letting the fact be what it currently is, while quietly building tomorrow's identity in a separate room. There's no argument, because there's no need for one. You're not disputing today. You're authoring tomorrow. The third test is whether the state feels tense or settled. Delusion, because it's fighting the visible world, always carries a current of anxiety underneath it, a grasping, defensive quality, because some part of the person knows the claim is being contested. Assumption, done properly, feels calm. It feels almost boring. It has the texture of an ordinary Tuesday in someone else's already settled life, not the texture of a dramatic declaration being defended against the facts. If what you're doing at night feels like a tense argument you're trying to win, you've slipped toward delusion. If it feels like quietly, casually being someone for whom the matter is simply closed, you're doing assumption correctly. The fourth test is whether you check the next morning. Delusion checks constantly, because it's always trying to confirm its claim against the visible world on an urgent timeline. Assumption doesn't check, not because it's afraid of what it'll find, but because it was never making a claim about tomorrow morning in the first place. It was only making a claim about who you were, tonight, in the deep layer where identity gets built. If you catch yourself scanning your life every morning for proof, gently remind yourself, that isn't how this works. The seed doesn't get dug up to see if it's growing. It's planted, and then it's left alone. So here's how you actually do this tonight, now that the distinction is clear. As you settle into bed, don't try to convince yourself that anything about your outer life has already changed. Don't argue with the facts of today at all. Simply leave them alone, exactly where they are. Instead, quietly bring to mind who you would be, on the inside, if the thing you wanted had already happened, and gently occupy that identity, privately, without needing anyone to witness it, without tension, without checking. Let it be as unremarkable and settled as an ordinary evening in the life of someone for whom this simply is how things are. That's assumption. It makes no claims about tonight's bank balance, no claims about tomorrow's headlines, no demand that anyone agree with you before sunrise. It only makes a quiet claim about who occupies the deepest room of your identity, and it leaves the rest, patiently, to the layer of mind whose entire job is turning identity into circumstance in its own time. This is the truth that actually changes everything, not because it makes the practice feel more comfortable, but because it makes the practice sturdy enough to survive the waiting. Delusion always collapses because it was built to demand an impossible timeline from the visible world. Assumption never collapses under that same pressure because it was never asking the visible world for anything on a deadline in the first place. It asks only for your quiet, private, untroubled occupancy of a new identity, one calm minute at a time, and it trusts the deeper layer to do, in its own unhurried way, the only job it has ever had. Tonight, when you lie down, you're not lying to yourself. You're simply choosing, with full honesty about today and full patience about tomorrow, who you intend to be. That's not delusion. That was always the truth.